No matter where you go on planet Earth, you will encounter energy vampires. And when I say energy vampires, I don't just mean people. I don't just mean that toxic work colleague. I don't mean that narcissistic family member or that friend who only reaches out when they need something. No, it runs much deeper than just that. You see, energy vampires are essentially anything, whether it's alive or not alive, that can only survive based on whether or not you pay attention to it. So think institutions, think politics, think news you see on social media, think anybody you see on social media, think any sort of professional sports. All these things here can only exist depending on whether you pay attention to them or not. Think about it. If you stop paying attention to politics, if everybody stops paying attention to politics, then they will eventually crumble and cease to exist. If people stop paying attention to workplace drama coming from one particular person, then that person will stop spreading rumors. They'll stop gossiping. If people stop watching the World Cup, for example, it just happened. If people stop watching football, basketball, the Olympics, etc., then those things will simply cease to exist. And you see, it's not that all energy vampires have ill intent. Some of them do, of course. There's positive with every negative, good with evil, and that's just how things are. But it's that all energy vampires depend entirely on their ability to harvest energy from others by capturing and maintaining attention. That's why I've said in many videos, and I'm sure you've heard other people say the same thing, attention, alongside your health, of course, is your most valuable resource. Where attention goes, energy flows. Now, one of my favorite movies of all time is called The Matrix. You've probably seen it with Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, and you probably know the story. If you don't know the story, well, in short, in the movie, people's physical bodies are harvested by these AI robots, and while their bodies are being harvested, their minds are essentially thrown into this simulation. So they're living out this false reality that they think is real. And the people are distracted by this false reality and they just fall into the monotony of everyday life because that's safe and predictable and comfortable, rather than figuring out, okay, well, maybe there's something beyond. And of course, they end up doing that in the movie. But my point is that those same people that were living in that AI curated reality, which is the Matrix, their physical energy was being harvested for the robots to survive and thrive. And it's the same with energy vampires. You see, all these things that I mentioned before, whether they're people or institutions or sports or politics or ideologies, they can only survive based on your attention. And it's also important we consider that by nature, humans are overly emotional creatures. That's just how we are. And we also tend to pay more attention to things that are negative, mostly because of the negativity bias, which was way back when a survival mechanism that actually helped people thrive and find resources and escape predators and do all these things that put them in a better position to reproduce and continue living on for the rest of their life in safety. And this negativity bias still remains inside of us. That's why we feel so compelled to react emotionally to gossip in the news and politics and information about wars happening across the world that have no impact on our life here, wherever you are. This negativity bias essentially creates this unconscious pull to check out whatever that information is. Because along with the negativity bias, we have it deep within our minds to always seek out new information. We always want to feel like we're being fulfilled in some way by novelty. Now, look, unless you plan to leave society and live like a hermit for the rest of your life, then you'll always be around energy vampires. Whether they're people or social media or news or institutions, they're always going to be around you. That's simply how things are. But you can protect yourself. And I believe that the main way you protect yourself is through mental alchemy. Alchemy is something I've talked about in a few other videos, not too in-depth, but today I'll go a little bit more in-depth. You see, alchemy is the idea of turning lead into gold or trash into treasure, or something that is unhelpful to something that is very helpful. In this context, it would be turning that negative energy that you're experiencing, whether that's from social media or people or the news or whatever else, into fuel that benefits your life, enriches your experience of reality in whichever way you want to do that. Now, it's not easy, but it is simple, all right? So what I want to talk about here is a few ways to essentially alchemize this negative energy, use your attention to your advantage, and take those resources you cultivate and essentially use them in ways that benefit you, all right? So let's get into that. Now, one more thing before I get into the practical steps. It's important we keep in mind the first law of thermodynamics, and that states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be cultivated and transformed and transmuted, all right? So this is why when I talk about alchemy, I'm talking about channeling whatever that energy is and redirecting it in ways that are beneficial to you, all right? So the first step you can take to going about this mental alchemy with energy vampires to protect yourself is notice the hook. And the hook could be, well, the hook is context dependent. It all depends on where you are, what you're experiencing, how your emotional state is, and what the intentions of that energy vampire are, all right? So the first step of this with noticing the hook is, of course, having awareness, having presence, being mindful of the situation you are in, not only of yourself, but of the things happening all around you. And that's also a big reason why I'm super big on practicing meditation, all right? But that's more for another video. Once you totally accept the fact that there are forces outside of you that want to steal your attention and manipulate you and pull you in different ways that aren't beneficial, then that immediately puts you way above most other people, all right? Rather than sleepwalking through your life and just assuming that everything's hunky-dory all the time, because that is not the fact of the matter, you know that, all right, these external forces, they, by and large, don't want me to have agency. They don't want me to do things on my own accord. They want me to follow a certain script or act in a certain way or believe in a certain set of beliefs that serve them and not me. So whenever you find yourself in a situation where an energy vampire is trying to steal your attention, steal your energy, take a moment to pause, take a deep breath, ground yourself, and logically think through it, all right? This is the alchemical moment, you could say. This is when you get to decide what your next steps are. This is when you take back control and you say, hey, I have agency rather than that external force controlling everything I do. So whether that's in the workplace or whether that's at a family get-together or whether that's when you find yourself about to doom scroll on social media, you take that pause. You say, okay, where am I at right now? What am I thinking? What is this action going to do for me? What will it not do for me? And then you can decide from there. All right, so that's number one. Notice the hook. Now, step number two here is make the unconscious conscious. So from here, you can get even more logical. And you ask yourself something along the lines of, what part of me is this energy vampire feeding on? So perhaps it's your need to feel informed. Perhaps it's your need to feel accepted. Perhaps it's your fear of missing out, or maybe something deeper like an underlying emotional trauma that has been repressed for many years. And you think that this behavior is going to fulfill some sort of, or fill some sort of void that's been empty for all this time. Whatever the case may be, that depends entirely on your situation. Once you find out what this is that's driving your behavior, what this energy vampire is trying to do, you gotta name it. Logically understand exactly what it is. What this does is it makes the invisible and unconscious reaction a visible and conscious action. So in the past, if somebody would say some snarky comment, you would say, fuck you, shut the hell up. This time, you're saying, okay, well, they made a snarky comment. I'm gonna take a pause, not let them hook me in, and I'm gonna think about what that energy vampire is trying to get out of me. Maybe they're trying to get some sort of emotional reaction to make them feel superior. Okay, well, if that's the case, then I am not going to feed into whatever that is. And yeah, well, you might feel better by doing that unconscious action because it's this emotional rush, it's this emotional release. A few minutes later, you're gonna be like, damn, I should not have done that. I should not have said that. I should not have been pulled into whatever drama that these people are into. In the moment, we don't think logically, we think very emotionally, but if you can break that chain, if you can stop that pattern, if you can interrupt it and make the unconscious, typically reactionary response a logical and informed response, that changes everything, all right? So that's number 2, make the unconscious conscious. All right, now step 3 is redirect the energetic charge. As I mentioned before, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So once you essentially break that pattern and become one who thinks logically about whatever that energy vampire was trying to do, and you make a better decision, now it's time to redirect it. So we got to keep in mind that whatever energy that energy vampire was trying to pull from you, or whatever negative energy they were throwing your way, it doesn't just disappear. You now have that energy inside of you. It's just neutral if you follow the first 2 steps of noticing the hook and making the unconscious conscious, all right? So now with redirecting the energetic charge, and after you've made an informed decision, now you gotta act differently, all right? And so obviously this is much easier said than done. You'll be in a situation where maybe somebody's gossiping about some nonsense. Maybe the news is saying, oh wow, the stock market's going down. You're gonna sell all your shares of whatever stock you own. And it's very easy to act impulsively and let your brain just like shut off and do whatever feels most comfortable in that moment. But once you can take that pause and really sit within the moment and just embrace the fact that, okay, I'm in a neutral zone right here. I haven't made a decision in one way or the other. It makes it way easier to redirect whatever that energetic charge is. And now the 4th step of this, even after you've taken an action that actually benefits you and serves the people around you, is what I like to call an energy deposit, all right? The energy deposit is essentially the final process of fully alchemizing the decision you've made and turning that negative energy into something positive and beneficial for you. So I'm a big fan of breath work. I'm a big fan of going for short walks after I've made a difficult decision. I'm a big fan of journaling. All these things are very beneficial because it allows you to essentially work through internally whatever decision you made in the physical world, all right? And it might seem nonsensical, like, yeah, why would I do something like this after I've already made an informed decision that benefits me? Well, what this does is it reinforces the chosen behavior. And this conditions you at the subconscious level to make more informed decisions and not react emotionally to negativity that's happening all around you. So you feel eventually much less compelled to even pay any attention to these energy vampires. You're just like, all right, well, I have had more success. I have receipts, you could say. I have data points on this mental spreadsheet of all the times I have made better decisions. And when you pair that with going for walks or hitting the gym or journaling or breath work, you're essentially validating the decision you made at the physiological level. So your biology is more so willing to work in alignment with a positive and informed and logical decision rather than reacting negatively and emotionally and impulsively to whatever energy vampire you may be facing. The main objective here is just associating some sort of positive emotion from that beneficial, informed decision with making future decisions, all right? And as time passes, your nervous system will adjust. You will feel much less compelled to react negatively to whatever energy vampires you may be facing in any area of life. And to me, that is completely incredible. You can deal with some sort of nonsense, some negative person, some hyper-polarized information coming from the news. You can deal with a shitty circumstance that is meant to get you feeling bogged down and feel more energized rather than feeling drained and defeated. It's a very strange thing, and I don't quite logically understand how it works, but This is simply how it is, and I've experienced this firsthand with myself, with my one-to-one clients, with even my friends and family who have done that inner work and then find themselves reacting differently to these energy vampires all around. So yeah, give it a try. Consider these steps. And I know they might seem simple, but when you actually try to implement these things at the practical level, you realize that it's very difficult. Because as I mentioned earlier, we humans, we are emotional creatures, and we tend to pay attention to negative things. We tend to feed into that negativity. And it happens unconsciously, of course. But yeah, remember, you can live at your own pace. You can live on your own wavelength. And while there will be people who will always want to steal your energy and get you feeling emotional and bog you down, you don't need to feed into that. You can essentially girdle that energy, make it into a tonic that better impacts your own life. Just keep in mind that the world wants you scattered, foggy, and reactive. That's a given. So it's on you to slow down and implement these steps. Be logical, be reasonable, have patience, and take it day by day. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to work one-on-one with me in my mental mastery program, you can do that. Link is below to apply. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.